Hi, I'm Matty.
Hi, I'm Shanoa.
And you're watching...
What? My name is Lubna Gem Arielle. I've called my talk How I Left My Job for a Livelihood. Well, why livelihood? That means a couple of things to me. First of all, I love the way it sounds, livelihood, much nicer than job. And also in Old English it just means a way of living, which is something that I've aspired to for years and years and years. And I've finally ended up in a position where what I actually do reflects who I am. That wasn't the case for very, very many years. I started off my career as a city solicitor. From the outside, it probably looked great. I mean, the building itself was this huge marble building. There was an atrium indoors with trees and fountains. I strutted around like everybody else, probably appearing very successful. But I knew the real cost of my Prada shoes. I was absolutely dying inside because this was the last place that I wanted to be. I also, for one thing, I liked my trees outdoors, not inside a building. Why had I ended up there? Well, probably because I didn't have enough courage when I was kind of growing up. I come from the sort of background where my parents expected me to be a lawyer, which I was, or a doctor or a dentist, or that sort of thing. So I ended up there in this office, absolutely hating it. I used to sort of, cry in the toilets, and I used to have this bizarre recurrent dream where I would turn up into a meeting where everyone was there in their grey suits, and in the dream I would come in with a plate of cakes. It was just not right for me. I had this thing one evening where I was looking through the Evening Standard. I'm sure you'll remember or know the cartoon, the Far Side cartoons. And there was a cartoon which had a wolf at a desk, and he was just sitting there in the middle of the forest, and all these tiny little animals were bounding in front of him. And the wolf just says, "I envy those critters their freedom." And I realised that it was probably just as simple as that. It was my choice to be sitting there in this place that I hated, and I could just actually stand up and I would be in the real forest. So I handed in my notice the next day. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do next, but what I did know was that I didn't want to be there. And I thought about some of the things that were worse, and the only thing I could think about that I would want to do less was being one of those people in Oxford Street with a sign saying "Golf Sale this way." So I left, and I obviously had to work to pay my bills, so I went to work in a restaurant, basically taking people's coats and taking them to tables. That was a real eye-opener for me in what people were really like, and I learned a lot about human beings at that time. I was exactly the same person, but people treated me very, very differently. I left that after a while and went and worked. I qualified as an aerobics instructor and personal trainer, and I did that for a while, and I sort of helped some people who worked in film production with some of their legal support, and I just got really, really tired. So after a while, I did go back to law, and I thought I'll try something different. I wrote, not thousands, but it felt like thousands of letters, eventually got a job in a music law firm, did that for a while, didn't like it that much more. I tried working in-house for a company, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and advising a different way. And then I had what I think is probably my big breakthrough. I was out eating mussels. So, miracles happen in very unusual places. And I wasn't bored with my companion, but I was thinking, oh Lord, gosh, these shells are so iridescent. They look like butterflies. Oh, chrysalises. What else comes out of chrysalises? What if human beings could come out of chrysalises? And I woke up 2 weeks later and wrote a story. It just came out about a little girl who's not very well. She gets visited by a butterfly, and all this amazing transformation takes place, and at the end of it she flies over the rainbow. And I illustrated it as well, and the illustrations were pretty awful. I hadn't drawn since I was about 14. My parents were very insistent that I only did academic subjects, so I just didn't really have those skills. I went looking for an illustration class, and when I was doing that, I found out about something called Access, which is a course you can do that then enables you to apply to go to university. So I did a 2-year Access into Art course in the evenings, and then I applied to go to Central St Martin's and got a place on their 5-year part-time BA. I then kind of left my job at PwC and went to work part-time at another law firm. which was kind of quite unusual at the time, but there was a condition, which was that I always had to have my mobile phone, and if I had to go to a client meeting on my art day, I would do it. The result was that 3 years into the part-time degree, it just wasn't working. Law was still taking over, and I sort of gave up. I gave up the degree, and I also left my job. It was even beyond thinking, because actually to give up St Martin's was a big, big deal for me. And in that space, I suddenly realised I had to appreciate and accept all of myself. So I'd spent all these years going, I hate law, I don't want to be a lawyer, da 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 da. And I suddenly realised, well, hold on. Yes, I don't like being a lawyer, but I've learned all these other things. I can facilitate people. I'm used to processing very complex material, and I thought about all of the other things that I could do. One of the things that I had done when I was a lawyer is I had been a contributor on a programme for Christian TV. They'd made a programme on the Ten Commandments and asked me to speak about the rights that Jesus has in his name, because I used to advise on trademarks, company names, domain names. So I got that material and I sent it off to an organisation called Legal Network Television, who made programmes for lawyers. And I pestered them every week for 9 months. And they eventually said to me, we need a freelancer. And so I made a freelance programme for them, and I carried on working for them as a freelancer really until last year, when I'm technically still on their books, but they're really not using freelancers anymore. So I've started to make programmes for other organisations. I also decided that I would like to do an online advisory for artists, where they could send in their copyright and contract queries and I would answer them. And I made an Arts Council application. I got so much discouragement around it from everybody I interviewed in support to my application. So rather than being put off by it, I let the application go through. I didn't get the funding, but everyone kept saying, it's been done before, it's been done before, and I found out why. I investigated, spent a lot of time finding out why, and tracked down this man who had set up a very similar service in the 70s. And he and I ended up sort of approaching another organisation called ArtQuest, who now have that service, which still runs today. It's called QMA. And he also invited me to be his assistant. He lectures on all sorts of organisations, and I've assisted him, and I still carry on doing that. So kind of out of that, I kind of, all these different things came out. And once I was a bit more stable, I also re-embraced my art. I got my children's story, which had just lain to rest all this time, revived it, started to take it around to schools. All these other skills I had sort of came into play. I do a workshop where we make butterflies. My aerobics instructing experience helped me to devise dances, so we have some butterfly dances, which maybe I'll show you on another occasion. And my presenting led to acting. I spent 6 months in the States acting on stage, and I've come back and been in a few short films, a few corporates. I've just finished a 1-year acting class. So where am I now? Well, it's 2012, and all of that's still ongoing, but I have a blend that I'm very, very happy with, of kind of different things I feel feed these different parts of myself. Nothing's really a huge compromise. And I guess if I had to say what are the 2 or 3 things that I learned along the way that meant a lot to me and kept me going, I would say that the biggest thing is just to keep going. And if someone says no, don't think about it as being a no. Look at what's underneath it, because it might be a no to what you were asking for, expecting, but it could be a yes to something that's actually much bigger, much better, and something much more wonderful than you imagined. And I guess tied to that as well is just realise that there's always